5. Lost Black Tribes of America that America wants you to forget. They didn't just disappear, they were erased, scrubbed from the textbooks, erased from the census, hidden behind lies like Portuguese, Turkish, Indian, or simply labeled other to protect the delicate feelings of a nation that couldn't handle the truth. That black blood runs far deeper and wider across this country than anyone is willing to admit. You've heard of the Creoles, of course you have. New Orleans' golden children of mixed ancestry, steeped in gumbo, jazz, Catholic mysticism, and undeniable star power. Today, Creole heritage is romanticized, celebrated, and put on a pedestal, largely thanks to global icons like Beyoncé, whose very roots are Creole through her mother, Tina Knowles. That lineage has been discussed in interviews, highlighted in documentaries, and even reflected in Beyoncé's art. It's become something powerful, something prestigious. But what about the others? What about the tribes of African descent whose names were not uplifted in Grammy speeches, whose bloodlines were not turned into cultural pride, but buried under racism, shame, and generational silence? What about the Melungeons, the Guineas, the Turks, the brass ankles, the brown people of Kentucky? What about them? These were the forgotten people, the lost tribes. They didn't live in spotlight cities. They weren't glamorized in Hollywood. No HBO specials. No glossy family trees. These were mountain dwellers, swamp survivors, and rural families who dared to exist, black, mixed, proud, in places where their very presence challenged the racial hierarchy. They were called Melungeons, Guineas, Turks, brass ankles, and brown people. Their ancestors were enslaved, bred, or born free and still chased out of history. They lived in West Virginia, South Carolina, Kentucky, Tennessee, and Virginia. And America did everything it could to make sure you'd never know their names. Let's talk about them now. The Melungeons, Tennessee, Virginia, Kentucky. We start in Appalachia, where dusky-skinned people with straight hair and African features lived in the shadows of the Blue Ridge Mountains. The Melungeons were said to be Portuguese or Turkish or native, anything but black, even though their DNA told a different story. Many descended from free black people, enslaved Africans, and Native Americans, surviving by isolation, secrecy, and in some cases, passing. Generations were taught to lie about their ancestry just to be allowed to vote, own land, or send their children to school. And yet, some of the oldest American bloodlines trace back to Melungeon families, people America never wanted to admit were black. And if you think this is all just folklore, think again. Some historical researchers and genealogists believe that none other than Elvis Presley, the king of rock and roll himself, may have descended from Melungeon ancestry through his maternal line. That's right. The man America crowned as its cultural icon might have had African, Native American, and European blood pulsing through his veins. It's a fact that shakes the very foundation of how we define whiteness and legacy in American pop culture. The truth? Even our kings might be more mixed than the crown ever admitted. The Guineas, West Virginia. Travel north into the hills of West Virginia, and you'll find another group long smeared by slurs and silenced by shame. The Guineas. For decades, they were treated like ghosts, labeled dirty, inbred, or mysterious by locals who never wanted to admit their real origins. But the Guineas were simply the descendants of African Americans, some free, some escaped, who built quiet lives in the wilderness to avoid persecution. Their bloodlines often crossed with white and native neighbors, but they were never allowed to forget that they were other. Many Guineas were forced to attend separate schools and denied jobs, even as they clung to their land and dignity in the face of relentless racism. The Turks and brass ankles, South Carolina. Now let's head to the swamps and backwoods of South Carolina, where two little-known groups still baffle historians and genealogists today. The Turks of Sumter County weren't Turkish at all. They were black, at least partly, but claimed Middle Eastern roots to escape the violent caste system of the South. They attended white schools, paid white taxes, but were never fully accepted. Why? Because everyone knew. You can't bleach the blood. The brass ankles were similar, light-skinned descendants of African Americans and Native Americans who formed their own communities to survive. The name itself was a slur used to describe people whose skin was not quite white, as if they wore a permanent stain around their ankles. They weren't allowed to be white, but the law didn't want them claiming to be black either. So they existed in limbo. Too black for privilege, too light for solidarity, too proud to disappear. The brown people, Kentucky. Then there are the brown people of eastern Kentucky, known in hushed tones if they're known at all. The state didn't know what to do with them. Too dark to be white, but not fitting the classic mold of the African American narrative. Many of these people were descended from free black families or those who had intermarried with native tribes and local whites generations ago. But in places like Floyd and Breathitt counties, their very presence created legal confusion. Courts would fight over their racial designation. Census takers would change their racial category every decade, and yet they remained rooted, resilient, and proud. The state may not have wanted to name them, but they named themselves. Brown people, that's what they were called. That's what they answered to, because to be anything else was dangerous. So why haven't you heard of them? Because their existence breaks the narrative. These people show that African ancestry wasn't just urban or southern, it was rural, Appalachian, swampy, poor, and proud. It wasn't just about slavery and emancipation, it was about survival in a system that erased people not just from laws, but from memory. America couldn't allow the idea that blackness was everywhere, that freedom didn't come from a white man's proclamation, but from hidden families who carved it out themselves, one unmarked grave at a time. Grave at the. That African blood could exist in a child with blue eyes and straight hair. That history isn't what you're taught, it's what you're denied. And while some legacies, like the Creoles of New Orleans, are allowed to flourish in magazines, music videos, and ancestry specials on primetime television, these lost tribes were buried under the weight of America's shame. The Melungeons, the Guineas, the Turks, the brass ankles, the brown people. They weren't myths, they weren't rumors, they were real. They still are. And they deserve to be remembered just as loudly as anyone with a Grammy. Legal disclaimer. Some aspects of this story are based on folklore, oral histories, and evolving genetic research. Identities, locations, and ancestral lineages may vary by source. This essay is for informational and entertainment purposes only.